I stood in front of 30 people in a narrow, overheated room near Wall Street, sweat sticking the collar of my blue shirt to my neck. My palms tingled as I shuffled my pitch deck, half aware of the audience's blank faces glowing blue in the projection light. My name sounded thin through the handheld mic. I'd practiced this moment for months, tracing lines in the air of my studio apartment until my voice went hoarse, but nothing prepared me for their eyes. My film City Shadows, I said, exhaling slowly, is about the invisible lives of New Yorkers at night, subway musicians, cab drivers, late shift cleaners. A man in the second row, business casual with silver sideburns, coughed into his hand and glanced at his watch. Rows of legs in dark slacks crossed and uncrossed. I could feel them sliding away from me like passengers moving cars on a train about to jump the tracks. I pressed the next slide, a grainy still from a subway platform. The room stayed silent. It's an honest look, I ventured throat-tight, at beauty and hardship, about resilience. What's your market? Someone barked from the back. I squinted past the projector light. What's your path to monetization? A shiver of frustration chased up my spine. I wanted to bark back, to tell them what beauty was worth, what stories cost, but I forced a small smile. Festivals, limited theatrical with digital release after. We are building a following organically. The man with silver sideburns raised his hand with lazy finality. You want $300,000, he said, his voice echoing in the flameless air, to film janitors and musicians. Did I get that right? Laughter flickered across the room. It rose, sharp and brief, then quieted again, as if even my humiliation didn't hold their sustained interest. My molars ached from clenching, but I forced my voice into a calm I didn't feel. To tell a real New York story, I said, one people ignore, it matters. They didn't agree. I could feel their attention lifting away from me, to their phones, to the window, anywhere but here. I muttered through the last slides and forced a final smile before walking off the stage. As the next presenter approached with a glide and a grin, I realized I'd left my notes on the podium. I didn't go back for them. Outside, the air was heavier, summer in late September pressing down on the concrete. I walked 5 blocks to a Dunkin' Donuts smelling of burnt sugar. I dialed my mother, because I always did in moments like these, and tried not to let my disappointment leak into my voice. She picked up after 2 rings, her tone short and bright. How was the meeting? I hesitated. My mother had always spoken the word filmmaker with a raised eyebrow, like it was an allergy or a phase you'd hopefully grow out of. It didn't go great, Ma, I said. They laughed at me. Her sigh through the phone was a rush of steam. I don't know why you keep doing this to yourself, Jamie. When are you going to put this behind you and, be practical? Get a real job. A real job, the phrase was a bitter taste I couldn't swallow. I'm not giving up, I heard myself say. I was surprised at how solid my voice sounded. You can't live on dreams, honey. We hung up not long after. My coffee was too sweet, too hot. My hands shook as I stared out at the street. I saw myself reflected in the glass as a blur, faceless, untethered. Later, I packed my camera in its battered case and rode the C train home, passing 2 saxophonists trading tinny blues on the platform, faces resigned, cheeks puffed against brass. The city pulsed with stories and I burned to film them, but doors didn't open for people with ideas, not without money, not without someone to believe in you first. For months I fought. When people ask how I made it, that's the part I want to describe, the daily grind, hands cramped from editing at dawn, eyes hot from the glow of my battered laptop. But nobody listens to the ugly parts, the lonely hustle. They ask about the instant, the big break, as if it appears out of nowhere. The rejection from the investors wasn't the first, just the latest in a series so long and numb I stopped counting. I filmed anyway, scraping together enough from freelance editing gigs to rent lenses, trading coffee for sound work on other people's sets, haunting the city's underworld with my Canon balanced on my knees. New York is generous if you know its cracks and the night crews who slip through them, and I learned to move quietly, swimming in the city's invisible current. Some nights I'd sleep 4 hours, some I'd forget to eat. My mother called twice a week, her questions gentle but pointed. You look thin, Jamie, you don't have health insurance, you want this life forever. Sometimes my cousin Michael chimed in during Sunday dinners, his laughter low and tight. You still making movies, superstar? When are we gonna see you at the Oscars? Jabs from family stuck deeper than the strangers in investment offices. At least those people owed me nothing. At family gatherings in Queens, the same two-story brick house, the same plastic-covered chairs, small talk shifted around me, cautious and exasperated. Maybe you should look into real estate, Aunt Marina suggested over potato salad. Or teaching, people always need teachers. Even my little sister Anna, a nurse with calloused hands and a bright, tired smile, tried to be gentle. You know, I tell my friends you're a filmmaker, Jamie. But maybe you could do weddings to make extra money. I nodded, smiled, laughed, my silence curdled into anger sometimes, a hot, contained thing that I pressed into each frame I shot, every careful cut on the rough edit. I poured my loneliness and rage into city shadows. Long nights in the edit bay became my sanctuary. Sometimes I prayed the film would make them see me not as the family's fool, but as someone who did things his own way. I shared clips online, most were ignored, a handful of likes from art school classmates, lonely praise from the handful of old mentors who hadn't forgotten me. Failure stank heavy and sour. One night everything changed. I'd uploaded the latest cut to Vimeo, tagged a few local film blogs and gone to bed. At 4 in the morning my phone buzzed so violently it nearly fell off the nightstand. It was blowing up, hundreds, then thousands, then tens of thousands of people were sharing it. A prominent film critic, Dia Chapra, had tweeted, "New York is a city of hustlers, not heroes. This unknown filmmaker captures the city in agony and splendor. I can't stop watching." I watched the view count climb like a fever. Comments streamed in, strangers seeing themselves in faces I'd filmed under flickering fluorescent lights. The rage that had carried me finally felt justified. A week later, a festival programmer called. I picked up in a haze, barely understanding. They'd slotted City Shadows as the closing film. It's electric, Jamie. Don't change a frame. Nights blurred into days, emails multiplied, small theaters, streaming platforms, even a couple of erstwhile investors, the same people who'd snickered in rooms like the one downtown. At the screening, I stood in the back as the theater filled with strangers. Laughter, silence, then tears as the credits rolled, applause as the house lights came up. For the first time, it felt like something vital had broken loose, something I'd hidden even from myself. Afterward, phones rang off the hook at home. Relatives who hadn't spoken to me in months left voicemails, suddenly dropping the word filmmaker with pride. But that wasn't the end. The real turning point still waited, a mirror I didn't know I needed to face. A year later, City Shadows circled the globe. Articles, interviews, panels, I wore the title of visionary as uncomfortably as an inherited winter coat. But I hadn't been home, not properly. My family called, cautious pride in their voices, but there was always a distance, like I might suddenly wake up, go back to teaching, or simply vanish. So when the St. Luke's Parents Association emailed, asking if I'd return for a screening as a local success, I almost deleted the message. Memories of that hot investor's room, of smothered laughter and hollow encouragement, flooded me. I wanted to say yes, I wanted to say no. In the end, I booked a flight to Queens. I told my mother I'd bring Anna. The day of the screening broke cold, rain sliding down the windows as I dressed in my best unworn blazer. My family lived in the same house on a cul-de-sac snared by chain-link fences and satellite dishes. I parked down the block, hands trembling. The sidewalk was littered with the same old trash, damp newspapers pressed to the curb like tired faces. My sneakers left ghosts in the puddles as I walked. Inside, my mother moved with brisk impatience, bustling between trays of roast chicken and foil-wrapped potato kugel. My aunt was already there, sleeves up, dusting off serving spoons. "Jamie, you're early," my mother said, glancing at the clock. I could see the tension in her jaw, the faintest questioning. Would this be another letdown or the moment they could finally brag? Anna hugged me tight. "You look tired," she said, grinning, but in a movie star way. The St. Luke's auditorium smelled the same, floor polish and cold air baking dust out of blue plastic seats. When I showed up out front, my old guidance counselor, Mrs. Tader, eyed me with gentle suspicion. "It's really you, Jamie, all grown up, we're all so proud. The film is everywhere." My son in California saw it. Inside, familiar faces shifted in their rows. The community that had once counted me out, some grey, some heavyset, the same faces from church, from childhood games in the alley. My cousin Michael, front and centre, arms crossed, that tight half-smile I'd tried so hard to forget, whispers rippled up the aisles, went off to play artist. Said he'd make movies, look at him now. Old classmates, neighbours, my baseball coach. People who'd clapped me on the back at graduation, then shaken their heads as the years passed without real achievement. I felt rage coil in my stomach again, livid and raw. I wanted to shout, "I told you," but instead I just nodded, lips pressed tight. Mrs. Taylor dimmed the lights. The projector whirred up, the opening shot flickered on the screen. The worn face of a subway musician, his bow cracked but his song whole, backlit with the soft gold of the underground. A cold panic gripped me. What if they didn't get it? What if they laughed again? I studied the audience while my film played, afraid to look at the screen. Raindrops tapped the windows like fingers. The whole room seemed to lean forward. Michael, my cousins, my mother's friends. A few teens whispered, but most stayed rapt. Up on the screen, the cab driver recited a love poem in Gujarati. The cleaning woman's voice, so quiet during shooting I almost missed it, filled the hall. Every flaw in the film, each hard cut and rough sound, glared at me through their eyes. The credits rolled, an impossible silence, then applause building, rising, not polite but insistent, unstoppable. Something hot and ancient twisted inside me. My mother was crying, hands over her mouth. My aunt blinked hard, dabbing at her cheeks with a balled-up napkin. Even Michael stood, his smile gone, eyes searching mine for something he'd never seen before. The principal took the podium, our own Jamie Feldman. The crowd surged into a standing ovation, and for the first time in years I felt the anger start to leave me, not because they finally believed, but because I knew I didn't need their belief. People crowded me after, lighting up, the same skeptical faces who'd once told me to quit now gushing about artistry and vision. "I always knew you'd do something big, Jamie. What an eye. Just like Scorsese." And beneath it, the unspoken, "We were wrong." I gathered their praise like loose change, surprised by how little I needed it. Michael cornered me outside under the dripping awning. "I got it wrong," he said, quiet for once. That was, "I never saw New York like that, not even living here." I met his eye. Nobody wants to look till someone forces them. Rain soaked our shoes. We laughed, awkward, the cold air sharp and clean. Back in the house, my mother pressed her hands to my cheeks. There was pride, but something else, wonder maybe, or fear that I'd go further away still. "I always worried for you," she whispered. "But you made us proud, you did it your way." I hugged her close. In her arms, the years of rejection, fear, midnight hustle, all felt like fuel, hard won, never wasted. Later alone, I watched the city lights flicker through the steamed window, my suitcase packed for another red-eye. I thought of that investor's room, the snickers, the shame. I could still feel them, a heat in my chest, but it no longer branded me. The anger had burned its shape into my work, but now, for the first time, I felt free. I clicked play on my laptop, the opening frame playing back in the silent kitchen. I saw the city through new eyes, and for a moment nothing and no one could touch what I'd made. Rejection was part of the price, a bruise paid for truth. I returned to the city, yes, but this time it was on my own terms. That was enough. That was everything.